are a group of delegates from week 2 at COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. I'm Kristen Poppleton. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm coming to you from Dakota and Anishinaabe occupied land in St. Paul, Minnesota right now. And I wanted to begin by acknowledging that we are all coming to this moment on occupied lands, and to ask you all to really reflect on the legacies that are held in those lands that you occupy. One thing that's really important to know about the United Nations, which is what we're focusing on here today, is that they do have an established Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And this is something that organizationally we recognize to be important, and also something that we really strive to center in these delegations to COP, to recognize that Indigenous peoples should be centered and leading on the solutions that we need. We also just want to acknowledge that beyond naming the stewards of this land that we're on, it's also important to acknowledge the stolen labor, the life and humanity of enslaved Africans and their descendants who built the foundations of these United States. And that this is actually even more, I think, prescient, important right now with us our delegates coming to us from Africa, from the African COP. Something to understand. Our organization is igniting and sustaining the ability of educators, youth, and communities to act on systems perpetuating the climate crisis. And these delegates at COP, the folks that are in COP, are literally there to reflect on, to disrupt, to comment, to engage in this system that is perpetuating the climate crisis, but also has the opportunity to be part of the solution to the climate crisis. And we think about overcoming disinformation, centering anti-racism and systemic equity, and personalizing and localized climate action as really important strategies for taking on that mission that I just named. We, as an organization, have been sending delegates to the international climate negotiations since 2009. And our delegations over the years have featured a just rich and diverse array of individuals who, since their experience there, many, if not most of them, continue to be really engaged in climate action. We are really find that being a part of this process, being an observer, being an agitator, being a commenter, being an involved person with this international climate process, while it is super wonky, and while the action that takes place at this level actually can only be officially approved with consensus between over 197 nations, we know that it's important to share the stories of humanity, of the world. And we know that youth voices and voices of communities that are being impacted most by climate change need to be the ones that are centered in the solutions and sharing back their reflections on this experience. This year, we are so privileged to have this rich array of delegates from across the United States, as well as Trinidad and Egypt and the Netherlands. And for those of you that are like, what the heck is this COP thing? The COP is, very simply put, a conference that happens annually. It's happened 27 times, and it is put on by the United Nations Conference of the Parties, that convention that bring together parties or countries to take on the climate crisis. The COP is sort of the culminating meeting of the year after a series of other meetings where those countries come together to make some sort of progress and agreements. We could spend days, if not months, talking about all the policy that goes into it, but this is very simply put, that important meeting that happens. Our work group that's here today is coming to you after a really busy week, and they still have another day or so, but we were really proud for them to kick off their week with a panel at the America is All In Pavilion, talking about the essence of the work that they all do and that we all do, and that is the work of educating and engaging public participation, getting people to understand that those elements, those things are actually critical for accelerating the action that we need. Educating folks, getting them involved, publicly participating, being an environmental defender. These are just as critical of an action as any of the other big sort of more wonky ones or more infrastructural ones that occur. And I'm going to stop talking because I'm not as interesting as all these folks, and just start with an introduction of one of our delegates that is not here right now. She's on an adventure off in the desert, but she has been an instrumental part of helping us tell this story this year. Stephanie Heckman is a visual illustrator and has taken time to meet with 6 of our delegates over the last 2 weeks to tell the story of their experience. And we encourage you to look back and see those in our blogs and digests on our website. But the story, the way that she tells the story, we think is just like so powerful and beautiful. And we encourage you to look back and see that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Barbara, who will open up reflections on COP. Take it away.
Thank you, Kristen. Welcome, everybody. So glad that you all are here to join us. This is my first time at COP, and it has been an amazing experience. Coming in as an educator, trying to figure out how to take all of this information and disseminate it with our schools that we work with down in Florida has been really interesting because it's given me so many ideas. One of the things that I was really happy to have been here while it was announced, it was the Green Jobs for Youth Pact that was sponsored by the UN and some other entities. And it really put into perspective that youth are being involved in what they want for their future, and that adults are really having to take a long, hard look at what we need to prepare them for those green jobs, and that everybody needs to be included. And, we are all here talking about how to reduce our carbon emissions and, talking about energy efficiency. And each day here has been a separate theme. And, one of the first themes that I looked at, they had a long, 2-hour meeting, which was really interesting, was presenting solutions with the topic of oceans, on how to protect our oceans, which was really interesting as well. But in all of it, the recurring theme is that we need to involve our youth, and not only our youth, but also the indigenous population. And another great thing that I have been hearing a lot in these conversations is about nature-based solutions. So I was really happy to have been involved in those conversations with people that are putting ideas forward, and then taking what they've been saying, what they've been proposing, and seeing some of those solutions now planned for solutions. So we'll have to see about the implementation, but that has been my experience at COP so far. And I'm super excited about tomorrow when they will be presenting some, resolutions for the final day of COP. They also had a great green zone where we got to see a lot of the Egyptian people coming to see these amazing exhibits of art and music, And I got a chance to see an exhibit that was sponsored by UNESCO, and where they asked Egyptian children, since COP was going to be in their country, what they thought about their future. And so the exhibit was really amazing. And here are some pictures that you're seeing on your screen about it. But thank you, Climate Generation, for this opportunity. And I'm super happy that I was able to witness this and look forward to really sharing everything that I have seen these past couple of days. And that's it for me.
Hello, good people. I'm Susan, and I work at Climate Generation for a whopping 8 weeks. This is my 8th week, friends. So baptism by fire. So COP is something. It is something, and I am going to be sorting out what that something is for a long time to come. There is a lot of cognitive dissonance in the space. I think in part because it's here in Egypt, and so all this like newly transplanted landscaping that's already dying in the ground because this is a desert kind of thing, and there's just lots of weird stuff. But can you go to my slides? Yeah. So I spent the last few days mostly in the pavilion side of things and less in the official business meetings, in part because that's the space that I trusted myself to be. Kristen told me to behave myself, and sometimes that's hard. I have gone to a lot of workshops and panels done by young people, and I just have to say that the young people here at COP are fire. In the middle sort of my slide, you'll see 4 young people, well, 3 young people and a translator, but this young woman all in black from Yemen, she is living in a refugee camp, and she has started a business empowering other women to learn how to install solar energy into their homes in the refugee camp, and to use that to sew and do their cottage industries so that they can be entrepreneurs and make money. She talked about being a role model for other young Muslim girls, that the place where she lives is super conservative. And she was brilliant. And then the young man in the red, he lives and works in the large Somali refugee camps in Kenya, where the UN has started to sort of like decrease its support for the families living there as refugees. And so finding fuel to cook with is difficult. And so he started this project, and this refugee camp is like a small city. And so he started this project where there is an invasive bush and tree that he got permission to cut down. And so he goes to different parts of the camp and teaches young folks how to harvest these trees, turn them into briquettes, and then how to make these little stoves that you can put the briquettes in that are more energy efficient, and produce those and pass those out and make some money on the side, right? Brilliant young people. I went to a Frontline Solutions. I've been listening to a lot of people on the front lines, in addition to young people. And I heard about communities around the world for whom this difference, their voices are not at the right tables. Their voices are not at tables where negotiations are happening. There are rules that keep people on the outside of that. And there was a woman from Guam whose story just broke my heart, right? She talked about the Army and Air Force bases there, and that there's a 3rd base being built. And as they excavate to build this military base, they have dug up graves of her ancestors, and that there is no reparations, there is no inclusion of the voices of the indigenous people of that island in these decisions. And they're a colony, right? They can't engage in the same way that you or I who live in the States can. There is a young climate activist named Michaela Loach, I think you say it. Anyway, I started to follow her on Instagram, and I love this tweet that she shared. I have learned this week that there is a block of countries who are arguing that we should abandon the 1.5 degrees and just push it up to 2. They are primarily fossil fuel producing and exporting countries. And according to Stephanie, who sat in some of those negotiations, there's real danger that they could actually manage to do that. And so I love this quote. I don't think there should be any temperature target. People are already dying and the fossil fuel industry has already caused severe irreversible damage. The goal should be to end the fossil fuel industry in the global north by 2030 or faster. I appreciate those perspectives. And then in the lower center, so some of you know that I have lived for a long time in Costa Rica and I have deep connections and family. So I spent a lot of time searching for my Costa Rican people and I found them. And this is Reina, who is a young indigenous woman from the area of Costa Rica that I lived in, who this is her first COP. She's just trying to figure out how to navigate and be in that space, but she's really interested in education. So I'm super glad that we're translating our curriculum to Spanish because she's going to take it and run with it in Costa Rica, which is really exciting to me. And in the midst of all that sort of like the walls that we run into and the barriers that exist, I think there is something to be said about the relationships that activists form here and the solidarity that gets built in the community that shows up here to advocate for the right things, despite the fact that there are 600 and some fossil fuel lobbyists with delegate badges in those. I mean, Canada brought somebody from Enbridge, y'all. Enbridge, the people who built Line 3, is here in the negotiating rooms with Canada. Just saying. It's frustrating. But I also heard Ozawa Benishi Albert, who's from the Climate Justice Alliance, say that we have great power. And we know we have great power because of the number of restrictions and rules that are put on us. So I think it's just, it's really important that we keep showing up and we keep supporting young people, especially young Indigenous people, in making some noise and pushing back and getting their voices heard. That's what's on my mind today. We had a people's plenary and it was loud and proud and we marched and chanted and sang and it was inspirational. Thank you for listening to me ramble. Javen.
Oh, it's me next. Hello, everybody. I'm Javen Santos. I'm from Guahan, the island that is known as Guam. And what Susan was saying about the issues that are being faced in Guam were things that I experienced firsthand. And I was really excited to make a connection with someone from Guam while I was here. And yeah, just to show some of my experiences that I've had today. I think this webinar caught me on like a very interesting point. We're at the very tail end, and I had honestly, as a young person trying to be in this space, trying to track it all, listen to negotiators, and trying to make a difference in this policy space, I've had a tough time where things like not as an observer, not being let into some negotiations to observe because people from parties and which are the countries get priority over us as observers when observers are in this space in order to hold countries and parties accountable. That was frustrating. And I've been in several spaces just today where as a young person, it's been a lot of like older people controlling the narrative, either saying this is the way that you have to work within the system, or just talking over the voices of young people in general. So those are some of the frustrations that I'm feeling today. But overall, like the experience in COP, I think has been very educational, and there's been a lot of good opportunities, good meeting a lot of other young people who are feeling the same way that I do and are feeling frustrated that this space is not more inclusive to us and trying to make a difference in this space. I think meeting those young people and trying to build collaborations and build partnerships, I think has been part of what I've been doing and what I've been pushing for. Some of the photos here, seeing me in my climate gen jacket, seeing like some of my views of being in the plenaries where leaders were speaking about their goals and negotiations where people were discussing some of the points of like who are the stakeholders to include in the mitigation work program, which is a part of how mitigation is going to be implemented, and sitting in on discussions where the 1.5 versus 2 degrees was being debated. Getting to sit in those spaces has been really cool, and just getting to meet other young people who are ready and willing to make a difference, but also frustrated with how difficult it's been, has been really validating for me, because I've also been frustrated, and my hopes is that leaving this conference as a young person trying to make a difference in this spaces, that us as young people who are working in this can try to move forward and figure out the solutions and stand our ground and use our voice to ensure that the change that young people are inheriting right now, that's only going to get worse in the future, is being changed, that the change that we're wishing to see is informed by our voices, my voice as an Indigenous person, and the voices of all the people who aren't allowed to be here at COP because of the way that this badge system is set up. So there's been good and bad at COP, and I think that it's been a really great learning experience, and I hope that the decisions that I hope that even if the decisions made in this space aren't where we're going, that or aren't where we want them to be, that the people here that are on the ground trying to make a difference are able to collaborate in order to push that even further than whatever the decisions are made, because we need decisions that need to go even further than what's going to happen at this COP. So those are kind of my thoughts at this point. Thanks.
Hello, I hope that y'all can hear me okay. My name is Diamond Spratling, and I'm the founder of Girl Plus Environment. This is also my very, very first time being at COP, and I think it's day 4, but it still feels surreal that I'm here in this space. And I think one of the things that I really just appreciate, and especially today after the People's Pavilion or the People's Plenary, was that it's just really insightful and I guess kind of humbling to be in a space with so many climate justice activists, especially climate justice activists who are BIPOC or people of color. And so that has been really, really good to just see, because I feel like a lot of times in the US, right now I live in Georgia, I feel very alone sometimes. And so it's been really good to just be in that space and see so many people, and especially young people here at COP. So I feel like that's been one thing that I've been experiencing, and also just being able to build relationships and connect with people and meet people, even those in the US that I wouldn't have traditionally met here. So that has been really good. But I think that one of the things that I've just been thinking about is what my place is, and just kind of thinking about, it kind of feels like there are 2 different conferences going on, essentially. You know, we have the pavilions where people are basically expressing their concerns and advocating and talking about their needs. But then we have another conference essentially going on where people are making decisions. And I'm just trying to figure out if the right people are in those decision-making rooms, because to me, from the side of being on the activism side, it doesn't feel like there are people in those rooms who look like me, who are equipped and able to make decisions about people who look like me. And so that's been something that I've been struggling with. And if you see the picture here, me with 3 other Black women, I was actually attending a panel in the Climate Justice Pavilion, and I posed that question and I asked, how do I go back to my community next week? Like, what do I tell them? What should my asks for them be? Because it feels like I'm not in the space where I want to truly be advocating for my community. And I got a lot of really hopeful and very inspiring responses from this group. And I actually just wrote my blog on it. So check out the next Climate Generation blog on that. So I've just been having those feelings and trying to figure out what my place is here, but also just understanding that that one of the things that I feel like I have been good at doing is trying to translate what I have learned and what I have seen in this space to my community, because the people that I've usually have been working with, they do not have the privilege to be in this space. And so I've been trying to debrief after every session and try to just inform folks through social media, through our Instagram, of what exactly is going on, because I have the privilege to be here. And so it's critical that we are actually translating it in a way that, one, our community knows what in the world this climate, this climate conference is, but also understand, how it's important to us in our community, and make it more local, because it does feel very broad and very big to be here in the space of world leaders. So that's one of the things, but I think that it's been really cool to sit in on a lot of the conversations and on a lot of the panels. But I will say that today has been significantly emotional for me, particularly just during the people's plenary, because I was hearing stories, I was hearing people talk about their experiences as it relates to climate, as it relates to racial justice and human rights. And to hear that as someone who is also experiencing that, and as someone who has friends and people who Black and Brown people who are also experiencing those same environmental and climate disparities, it was very hard for me, because when I hear their voices and when I hear the things that they're experiencing, I resonate with that, and I feel like a really deep connection with that. So it felt just very emotional for me to be there. But also, I guess, just still kind of insightful to still be in that space, to know that I'm not in the fight alone, and there are people all over this entire world who are essentially fighting the same fight. So I think that also still gives me a little bit of hope. So yeah, I've enjoyed my experience so far here in Egypt and at COP, and I hope I get to join again next year. And this is the photo also that the amazing Stephanie drew when she was following my day, and this also kind of helps tell that story of when I was talking about the panel, and just trying to remain very hopeful, and just even being on a panel and seeing these amazing, wise Black women be here in this space and able to give their perspectives has been sincerely insightful and hopeful for me as well. So I really appreciate those connections too. And I will pass it on.
Hello, can you all hear me okay? Yeah, great. Awesome. So let's see here. And now I need to remember what these pictures were from. They were from last week. So much happens in one day. It's hard to remember sometimes. Okay, let's see. Yes. This was with Selwyn Hart. He's the special advisor to the UN Secretary General. We got to ask him a question, like some people from the audience. And so I asked, how can the UN help us youth engage with the private sector to unlock funding for youth-led action? He didn't really answer this question because there were multiple questions he had to answer, and I think he kind of just forgot about it. But I'm sorry, I still have a cough. Oh my God, it's still not gone. So I did learn though about a few different funding initiatives that are going on. There's a climate justice fund that will emerge for youth-led action. And then there's the Climate Justice Resilience Fund, who has been doing more work on funding youth-led action or just grassroots climate action. And then Rivet is launching soon, which is going to provide micro grants to youth for youth-led action on social issues, not just climate. But yeah, so I got here on November 1st. Javen and I went to the Conference of Youth, and then we both went to the first week of COP, and now we're in week 2 of COP. So it does get tiring. You start your day at like 8 a.m., 8 to 9 a.m. you get to the venue, and then you leave late at night, you get dinner, and then by the time you're home, it's like 11 p.m. So that's just a little glimpse into what the day is like. Some days when I arrived, I would participate in an action that took place outside, as soon, like near the entrance of the COP venue. So we would enter, and there's the ICJO campaign. They're trying to get an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice, so that climate change can be seen as a issue of justice. And so that's a lot of members from small island developing states, and well, yeah, mostly them, and then the global south as well, advocating for this and a legal framework. Then I also learned about, I think it's in the next slide. Is there a next slide? Not sure. Okay, no, okay. So also learned about ecocide and exactly what they're trying to do. I had heard about them a while ago, but really they're trying to provide a legal framework for criminalizing acts against the environment or that harm the environment. There's particular language on how they define ecocide. So if you check out the blog that I submitted last week, there's like a link in there to learn more about what ecocide means and what their movement is about. But they mentioned that Brussels was, I think it was Brussels or Belgium, that in Belgium, that was soon to pass some sort of act or bill that will criminalize some form of environmental action. So I need to look into that. Thanks for sharing the blog, Claire. What are some other highlights? Let's see. For US youth, there were a lot of cool bilateral meetings. One with the head of NOAA, Dr. Spinrad, love his name, love him, he's great. And for that, basically the IRA and the, I forgot what the other thing's called, like infrastructure bill or something. The budget of NOAA was like 6 or 7 billion, and now it's increased by another 6 billion. And so that is going to give a lot more funding for coastal resilience. That will be their priority with that funding. And they're soon to hire a youth engagement advisor for Dr. Spinrad. And then we'll develop more youth engagement programming, which will center a lot around awareness and potentially funding for youth-led innovation on coastal resilience, but that will be their priority. I'm trying to think what else. Also met with, I can't remember her first name, something Medina from the ocean policy side. And actually Secretary John Kerry, or climate change envoy John Kerry, sorry, I'm like losing my voice, popped into the meeting and actually sat right next to me, which was cool. And I was trying to see if he remembered me from last year when we elbow bumped, but got to ask him a question. And so I asked about the First Movers Coalition and what he saw as the youth role in that coalition. And he basically said it would be good to like be mindful of where we decide to work as youth, using that selection power to not work for organizations, companies that don't align with our values when it comes to their environmental standards. And trying to think what else. Well, I feel like I could go on all day, but the last thing I'll mention is the Children and Youth Pavilion. It was superb seeing the first ever Children and Youth Pavilion. It was a great hub for youth who were here for the first time, may not have had friends, to just show up, you know, meet people, make friends. And there was amazing art that was popping up, even art that was being painted live every day on one wall. And one of my highlights was meeting Mary Robinson. She's head of the elders and was former president of Ireland and first woman president of Ireland. She's amazing. And if you don't know the elders, it was started by Nelson Mandela to create a collective of those with lots of wisdom on social movements and who still have a big passion for using their time to give back. So it was really nice learning from her and her team about how we can move forward together as elders and youngers in this climate movement. I'll stop there because my voice is slowly going. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you all so much for sharing. I'm going to open it up for if there's any questions from the audience. And also, while you guys, it's nice, it's cool to be able to just see where you all are there in the COP conference center as well in Egypt. Is there any questions that folks have? Feel free to turn off or turn on, like use your voice as well. If you have one. Paul, nice to see you, Paul.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you. You know, having been to 4 COPs in the last 15 years, it's so exciting to see the young people speaking up. And I just want to say, you know, from my experience with the COPs, it's what you bring home to your local community is what makes the biggest difference. So having you there representing, you know, the work that you're doing in your community, it's a slow process, but it's really picking up speed. And I'm very hopeful now that we can keep the 1.5 in play, because when people get a commitment, then they can do things that we didn't think were happening. And we need to, as Nelson Mandela says, it's always impossible until it's not. And we need to like turn that impossibility into action, and reaching out to the mainstream is really key now. So I think the work that you're doing needs to be brought home and shared with the people in your network. So Climate Generation, good work. This is awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Does anyone have a question for the crew? Brittany, good to see you too. Well, not see you, but
I'll go on camera. I just thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience. It's amazing. I know some of my youth were here, but had to jump off. Do you have any advice for the youth who are in our groups who care so passionately about this, but will never be able to make it to a COP, you know, for whatever barriers are facing them? But how can they make the kind of difference that you're making, get this kind of communication out to their communities? What's your best advice for them?
I guess I can give a shot at it. I mean, after like this frustrating day, I've been having conversations with other youth here, and Paul, I think a lot of people agreed with what you said, that most of the important stuff of COP happens when everyone goes home. So I think for people who are interested in climate action, climate solutions, but don't feel like they will ever get access to COP1, programs like climate generation and like other programs are available to make access to COP as easy as possible. But two, COP is just one avenue, and it's an avenue that's very restrictive, that's moving very slow. So there's a lot of opportunities to make change and be more effective in change in your communities, in your state, or just working in other systems that you can make a difference in. Because yeah, coming back from this COP, making a difference in this space is hard, and I think that there needs to be young people at every space. So if COP's not the space for you, maybe organizing a garden is the space that's for you, or making music that will inspire people to climate action is the space for you. I think that the climate movement, especially young people, have the opportunity to figure out where their individual niche fits into making a difference, and that can happen at COP, but it can also happen in our communities. If there's anyone else that wants to say something.
Yeah, I would say to follow the negotiations. A lot of the texts are already online. So reading up on the reports that come out of COP, knowing where the resources are, and like kind of learning how to read through them, looking for trainings like the one Care About Climate provides before going to COP, as well as, let's see what else, joining Youngo as a children and youth constituency of the UNFCCC. And anyone can join. You just sign up for the email listserv, and then it can be kind of confusing when you first join the listserv. But the good thing to do as soon as you join the listserv is to watch out for the first or the next constituency call. And during the next constituency call, they'll explain each time, what is Youngo, what are the different working groups, who are the contact points for the working groups, how do you join them. You'll end up having like 20 WhatsApp chats, but that's how it's done. And yeah, so I recommend doing that. And then there's a myriad of ways to get involved once you're on the listserv. But definitely having somebody like a friend who's been in Youngo a little longer to answer any questions you have as you're getting acclimated would be helpful, because it can get confusing. Cool.
Anyone else have something they wanted to say? Barbara, are you about to speak? Any other questions from the group? Do you all have any parting remarks? What you're looking forward to in the next 24, 48 hours before you take off? It can be taking a nap or eating food too. It can be something, it can be anything.
It can be anything.
Before we come, or when we come home.
You said it could be anything right now.
Yeah, you gotcha.
I have a special interview that I'm excited to share with a very special individual. I had the opportunity to interview a camel and ask the camel what he thought about COP. So we are very excited to send that over. All thanks to Susan and Barbara for their support. So
I cannot wait.
The video is so funny, you all. You be looking out for that. Anyone else want to share?
So I'm curious about, what are you enjoying about being in Egypt? I mean, that's a different world over there. What have you learned, and how are the people responding?
I think that that's one of the things that have found frustrating is I speak no Arabic, and very few of the local people here speak English. And usually when I travel, I speak Spanish and a little Portuguese, and I can communicate with local people. But but that's been the most frustrating thing. I did find one woman. Women are not in very many public spaces, but I did chat earlier today with one woman, and we used what's a translation, like a Google Translator, to talk about our kids and share pictures of our kids with each other. It was really cute, but yeah. Yeah, the weather's been nice. It hasn't really been super hot. Yeah, it's great. We're all looking forward to a real cup of coffee though, because Egyptians do not drink real coffee.
I'm a coffee junkie. That has been really hard. But the food has been really great. What they have built here, COP, is beautiful. As I mentioned before, like the green zone was really neat because of all of these like art installations that were done by various artists. They had this amazing collaboration with local basically all of their clothing was upcycled, and we're working with different materials. There was one entire dress that was made out of ties. So that was really neat. And so it's been interesting to learn about Egyptian culture as well. It's not only, pyramids. So it has been great to interact with people here after COP and hearing their voices here as well. So I've been in a couple of meetings where there are representatives from Egypt that have been given their perspective. So that has been really neat. Anybody else? What are you guys looking forward, or what do you think about?
I think one thing about COP is that food here is hard to come by. So I'm excited to go home and eat. But one of the things that I've enjoyed is that the fruit juice here is so fresh and so different than the juice we have back home. It's like a puree, and it's like really delicious, and it like makes me think about like the way that food security is tied to these conversations that we're having too. And
Yeah, I would say what I really enjoyed, honestly, is just hanging out with all the other delegates because they're actually really cool. I don't think we would have met outside of this, we're all put together, and I think that it has been really, really fun to connect with them, and I definitely think we'll stay connected after COP2. So that's been really, really good. And then just connecting with other people like from everywhere. I mean, I've never handed out so many business cards. No one has ever asked me for a business card before. So that was cool. But yeah, I'm enjoying my time here a lot, and just seeing and learning more about the culture has been really, really cool. I've never been to Egypt before. So that's been really, really insightful to just learn a little bit as we're here on their land, to just take all of that in and make it more of a learning experience for me too. So. That's it.
Cool.
Oh wait, let's
Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. I know it's getting late there and you probably haven't eaten or you need sleep. Everyone in this group got their blogs and things in today though, so good job. If you are interested in hearing post reflections from all of our delegates, we will be having a December 1st post COP webinar, and so please register for that if you're interested and follow these amazing people. They are representing not only Climate Generation but their own organizations, as you've seen, and you can read more about all of those on the blog site as well, because they're all doing great work in their local communities. So, and this video will be available in the next digest. Paul, I see that question. It's up on Facebook already right now, and it can be shared from there immediately, actually. So
Thank you.
yeah. All right, well, take care, everyone. Have a last couple days. So good to see you, and so good to see all of you that came to join us today. Have a great afternoon, evening, wherever you are.
Thanks. Bye.
Great job. Bye-bye.